McLachlan, and this is the 7th video in my series about bad arguments by trans activists. I really thought I'd finished with toilets, but there was one argument I forgot because thankfully I don't see it too often because it is so unbelievably stupid and dishonest. But it cropped up again recently. It will turn up from time to time, so I'll say something about it. Actually, the first time I saw this nonsense was in a tweet a couple of years ago, and it wasn't made in relation to toilets on that occasion, as it usually is. But I've never forgotten it because it blew my mind, and it's still there on Twitter, on the tweeter's timeline, so I found it and screen capped it. My friend was just threatened by a drunk man as she was walking alone. She was going to tell him off, but he had a knife in hand. He demanded to know if she was a man or woman. She showed him her vagina and got away. Fuck you, TERFs. Further tweets from this person, who is in New York City, by the way, reveal that the alleged incident took place in, check notes, Leicester, England, and judging by the time it was tweeted, it would have happened at around midnight. Now, it could just be the way she tells the story, but it doesn't sound remotely plausible, does it? Apart from the first sentence, yes, a random drunk may have behaved in a threatening manner towards someone walking home or walking alone late at night. But pulled a knife on her, not to demand money or to molest her. He demanded to know if she was a man or a woman, so she showed him her vagina. Some people took this story at face value and said, "Oh, poor woman, how terrible, is she okay?" etc., etc. The rest mocked it as mercilessly as it deserves. A lot of people commented on the difficulty of showing one's vagina from a standing position, but let's not go there. The local police, by the way, the following day publicly confirmed that no such incident had been reported, which you would surely do at the first opportunity if it happened to you, to give them a chance to catch the weirdo. But obviously, the thing that is beyond the pale about this tweet are the words, "fuck you, TERFs," not "fuck you, entitled men," or drunkards, or violent hoodlums. "Fuck you, TERFs," as if it has anything to do with those of us who are truly exceptional, real feminists. As if we are to blame. How? In a later tweet, she says of her friend, "She's not trans, but trans rights are human rights. TERF bullshit hurts all women. Get fucked if you think otherwise." So, to sum up, a woman gets attacked and degraded by a man because we insist that a woman is an adult human female and that men, whatever they call themselves, should keep out of our spaces. I mean, I presume that's what she means by TERF bullshit, because otherwise I have no idea what she could possibly mean. Before I move on, I'd like to say that I don't think this tweeter made up this story. I believe it was fabricated by her friend in Leicester, who does in fact exist. I've done my research, and the friend is a self-described butch lesbian who hates TERFs. And that's all I'm going to say about her at the moment. But this leads me to my next anecdote, which is about an alleged incident in a ladies' room in a Walmart store in Connecticut in the spring of 2016. Note the date. It involved this young woman, Amy Toms, who was supposedly told by a woman she bumped into in the ladies that she shouldn't be there and that she was disgusting. The story featured in several newspapers, including the Mail and some fringe TV shows. This was after Amy's rant went viral. Here's a short clip of that rant.
Like, she said, "You are not supposed to be here. You need to leave." So I said, "Yes, I do." And then she flipped me off and she's like, "You're disgusting." And she storms out. So I realized, like, when I was washing my hands, like, holy shit, she just thought I was somebody who was transgender. And she thought I was a dude who was hiding in the women's bathroom.
Right, so this unidentified woman could not conceive of the possibility that a young person in unisex clothes, short hair, baseball cap, in a ladies' toilet in Connecticut could be female. Not even when she turned round and spoke in her very girly voice from her quite heavily made up face on top of her definitely female shape. What a load of cobblers. What makes this story even dafter is the suggestion that the woman didn't mistake Amy for a young man who might have wandered into the ladies' room by mistake. Amy is convinced that this woman thought she was transgender, mistook her for a trans-identifying male with evil intent, and people who should know better picked up that story and ran with it.
A woman mistaken for a transgender woman was harassed in a Walmart bathroom in Connecticut. I'm talking about 22-year-old woman Amy Thomas.
Why? Why on earth would that strange woman think Amy is trans? And if she wasn't acting suspiciously, Amy, I mean, why would this other person think that this supposed transgender person had gone into the ladies to hide out in there, presumably to then do something bad? It makes no sense. Except that further on in the video, Amy gives a spiel about how awful it must be to be a trans person being challenged and trans rights are human rights, etc., etc. I think she fabricated the whole thing. Okay, there may be a seed of truth in it, as with the first story. It's possible that that woman was accosted by a drunk person as she was walking alone. That happens all the time, I'm sure. And Amy may challenged by some myopic woman in the ladies' room who thought Amy was a boy. And then they just elaborated the stories because they wanted to do their bit for the poor, marginalised and oppressed men who want to be accepted as women, and then they'd be able to bask in the warm glow of woke male approval. Here's another one. Mhairi Black is an SNP MP, Scottish National Party Member of Parliament, who claims she has been challenged not once but several times when entering female toilets. She hasn't said where this has happened, she hasn't said who challenged her or on what grounds, but she offers this claim as a reason why she supports gender self-ID and leaves us to join the dots. So the implication seems to be that she was challenged by people who thought she was male and shouldn't be in female toilets. And that would have been a very unpleasant experience, of course, and she doesn't want trans people to have to go through the same experience, which is very noble, I'm sure. But I don't believe for a second that anybody has ever mistaken Mhairi Black for being male. It happens to some women, but it didn't happen to her. She looks and sounds female, so why would anyone think she isn't? Now look at
Who
this.
decides I will never accept that I have to share intimate spaces with men, even if they are harmless? It violates my rights to privacy as a woman. Why is that not an issue for you? Because, Pam, you don't have the right to be in a room alone wherever you go. That's just not how the world works.
What a balloon full of hot air. The only remotely manly thing about Mhairi Black is her total lack of empathy for other women. But note the politician's mendacity. A woman's assertion that she won't share intimate spaces with men is immediately twisted into her wanting a room all to herself, so that Black can act all sanctimonious. Does she think we're all bampots or something. Of course, that's not how the world works. Nobody wants the world to work like that. How it works is that certain spaces are sex segregated, and most of us like it that way. And you, Mari Black, are trying to change it because you don't care about women and you think that men can be women just as they say they are, which makes you the bumpot. Now, not all such anecdotes are fabricated. In the spring of 2016, which happens to be when a so-called bathroom bill was enacted in North Carolina, a video showing a gender non-conforming woman being bullied by police was circulated with the narrative that it happened in North Carolina and was a consequence of the new bathroom legislation.
This is a girl, and you guys are harassing her because she's a dyke. And I'm in the back. I'm a fucking female. This is a girl. Do I have to tell you again?
According to fact-checking website Snopes, the location probably wasn't North Carolina, and the video was in fact posted on social media in 2015, well before the bathroom bill debacle, and is probably older than that. I think that what probably happened on that occasion is that the non-conforming woman was bullied by police because they didn't like her bolshy attitude and demeanour, not because they thought she wasn't female. And I think a similar thing happened with this 16-year-old lesbian in a McDonald's in Hull, England, also in the spring of 2016, as the bathroom bill debates were raging across the pond. She says she was asked to leave McDonald's because she'd used the ladies' toilet because staff thought she was a boy. McDonald's management and the police actually tell it differently. It doesn't matter. This is a typical comment that was made on Twitter about it. Bathroom bills inevitably lead here? How? Butch women sometimes get mistaken for men, always have done, probably always will do. It happens to friends of mine, and it has nothing to do with bathroom bills or anti-trans prejudice. At worst, it has to do with being ignorant, maybe being lesbophobic, but oftentimes it's a genuine and harmless mistake that embarrasses the person who made it more than anyone else. Right, so here is Lindsey Broadwell, a self-described butch lesbian who is a Labour councillor in Technotes, Leicester. If you happen to Google her name, you'll see that she has quite a colourful life. She has encountered a knife-wielding maniac at least once in recent years, but that's not relevant here. It wasn't anyone asking her sex on this occasion. Anyone using lesbians as a prop to go after trans people can go directly to hell. I've no idea what she's talking about here or how you even do that. Use lesbians as a prop to go after trans people, unless she's talking about the complaints coming from lesbians themselves about their erasure as a group defined as female homosexuals, because heterosexual men are claiming to be lesbians, and some are even expecting genuine lesbians to have sex with them. I'm a butch lesbian. As a result of rampant vile transphobia, I've been screamed at in bathrooms, ordered to leave by security, and been sexually assaulted. Transphobes are no friends of mine. Why would she think these unhappy experiences she claims to have had are the result of transphobia rather than lesbophobia? She doesn't explain it, and now she has deleted that particular tweet. Maybe she's realised that it's not a good look for a serving Labour councillor to say something so irrational. It makes no sense whatsoever to blame those of us who won't pander to such absurdities as that men can be women for the fact that butch-looking women are sometimes mistaken for being men, especially given that so many totally enthusiastic, real feminists are butch lesbians themselves. And it is just typical that the gender cultists, which shamefully include some lesbians, should try to pin this one on us. But of course they do. The woman behind and on the right of this photo is the handmaid extraordinaire who runs the Twitter account called Hetty Spoon. On the left, we are told, is her wife, who facially can very easily be mistaken for a man, at least in this photo. We don't, of course, see her height, her shape, her hands, her neck. We may not notice there is no shadow, sign of facial hair, at least I assume there isn't. I haven't analysed the photo closely. And we don't hear her voice. I can't explain what appears to be male pattern balding, but there are quite a few physical differences between men and women generally that the cultists seem to be in denial about, which leads them to say absolutely ridiculous things like this. How are you going to establish that she was born female? Are you going to give someone rummaging rights in her pants? Yes, of course, the only way to tell if someone is male or female is to rummage in their pants. Going back to her first tweet, you may be wondering what she means by Stock's claim that her wife is acceptable collateral damage in our war on trans women. I wondered the same, but it was easy enough to discover that it's a reference to something said in an article published on Medium last year by philosophy professor Kathleen Stock, co-written with 5 other feminist academics, and I mean real academics, not gender studies. It was entitled Doing Better in Arguments About Sex, Gender and Trans Rights. I said at the time that the article would be way over the heads of most trans activists, and so it proved to be. I'm going to read the part where it supposedly says Hetty's Viking love goddess of a wife or whatever is acceptable collateral damage. Given the occasional fallibility of our capacity to sex others, arguing for same-sex spaces for females, such as bathrooms, dormitories, and changing rooms, means that sometimes females in those spaces will be missexed, and sometimes males in those spaces will not be perceived as such. We see the former as a regrettable cost that has to be balanced against and is nonetheless smaller than the greater harms to females should women-only space effectively become unisex via a policy of self-ID. So, Kathleen Stock et al. Are being open and honest about the fact that we sometimes get it wrong. Not often, but it happens, and they are making the argument that though this is regrettable, it is not as bad as what can happen to women and girls were we to allow men access to women's spaces. That is an argument that Hetty Spoon and every other handmaid with their head up the trans cult's arse totally ignores. After all, the harms to females are just things like more perverts hiding cameras in toilets to spy on women, more 10-year-olds and septuagenarians being sexually assaulted. But what does any of that matter compared to the indignity of a gender non-conforming woman being asked to provide ID or a trans-identifying man not being validated as the woman he claims to be? As I said at the start, I don't see this stupidity too often, but there are many more examples than I've included here, and it's sickening that these anecdotes, whether they are real or imagined or purely hypothetical, as in the case of Hetty Thingamy's wife, are being misused to target feminists with hate and as propaganda against legislating for sex segregated public toilets. Now, that is not something I'm necessarily in favour of, by the way. I think it would be extremely difficult to get any such legislation right, given that what I said in the last video, I don't think that trans-identifying females who pass as men should be forced to use women's spaces if they don't want to, if they're happier in the men's room. Good luck to them. This isn't about equality, or at least not equality in the sense of giving everybody the same. It is about giving people what they need. And what women need is privacy and safety from men. And if trans-identifying men feel they need the same, it shouldn't be at our expense. If schools, businesses, public services, local authorities, whatever, if they care about women and girls, they will provide us with female-only toilets and changing rooms, whatever the law says. Otherwise, they will run into problems sooner or later. Okay, I know this video has been a bit rambling. I've depended a lot on anecdotes and other people's videos, and it's a bit long, but to sum up, what I've tried to show here is that in order to further their agenda of advancing so-called transgender rights at the expense of women and girls, trans activists will do any or all of the following. They will fabricate implausible scenarios and blame TERFs. They will take things that have actually happened, like videos that went viral, and attribute to them false narratives. They will come up with bizarre hypothetical situations about people having to show their genitals in order to prove what sex they are. They will blame people they call transphobes, but who are in fact mostly people who don't care what trans people do as long as they leave women alone, stay out of our spaces, sports, etc. And finally, they will completely disregard and misrepresent what women are saying and ignore our legitimate concerns about being forced to share spaces with men. So shame on them, and that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Bye.